What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. It's July. We are in the heart of the growing season, yet we are still sowing to make sure we always have healthy plants growing. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 crops you gotta get planted in July. Let's go! The first crop we could still get planted in July are cucumbers. They love the heat and grow incredibly fast when the conditions are right. Even though right now we are in peak cucumber production here, that doesn't mean the season is over. In fact, cucumbers will continue to grow and produce up until a frost. For me, I'm in New Jersey, zone 7A. My first expected frost date is about October 15th. That means I still have over 100 frost-free days left to grow. This is great news because the typical cucumber variety only takes about 60 days to go from seed to harvest. And some of them are even shorter. One of my favorite all-time varieties of cucumber, the Socrates cucumber, that one only takes about 54 days to go from seed to harvest. So there's still plenty of time to get some cucumbers planted. You can either direct sow some cucumber seeds right now, or you could plant them in a seed cell and transplant them into the garden when you have a spot that's ready. The second crop we could still get planted in July are summer squash. Ones like our zucchini, which we have right here. Come check this out. We've got a healthy looking zucchini plant with two perfectly sized zucchinis. Let me grab a harvest of these. So what I make sure I always do is come out and harvest these early and often, like I always talk about, because we want to make sure that this plant is continually producing more and more zucchini. Look how perfect these are, how nice they look. Right now we're just getting so much zucchini and we want to continue to get a lot of zucchini. So we want to make sure that we're always planting another round of zucchini to make sure that the harvests are always coming right down the pike. Similar to cucumbers, summer squash will continue to produce fruit up until a frost. And there are some excellent varieties that go from seed to harvest super fast, like this one right here. This is the Y-Star Patty Pan Squash, and this thing goes from seed to harvest in only about 50 days. Even if you already have a healthy and productive squash plant growing, like this one right here, it's still a good idea to get another round planted because something could happen. Say you miss one of the squash and then it gets too big and that slows the plant down, or even if a pest comes and causes some problems, like the squash vine borer, it's good to have another plant already growing on deck so we can replace this one once the issue arises. An advantage to planting another round of squash in July is that in late July, the squash vine borers typically stop laying eggs. So if you plant a round of squash right now, then by the time the squash gets larger and is getting closer to production, then the squash vine borers, they should start like diminishing how much they're going out and laying eggs. This way, you don't really have to worry about the squash vine borers. You can just kind of avoid them based on when you plant. Come inside here, you'll notice one thing on this backside. See this squash, how it's like dying and dead? The reason that happened is because this was not pollinated. This is what happens if your squash don't get pollinated. They kind of just like never get big and die off. This is what happens when they do get pollinated. They look big, beautiful, and they taste delicious. So what you can do is with this right here, when this flower opens up, if it's like a cloudy day or a rainy day and there's not a lot of bees out, you can go out and actually hand pollinate this yourself to make sure that you get that good pollination and ensure big, healthy production. The third crop we can still plant in July is one that will give us a fast and reliable harvest before fall. I'm talking about bush beans. Many bush bean varieties, like my favorite variety here, the dragon tongue bean, go from seed to harvest in only about 55 days, which means we still have plenty of time to get some bush beans planted. When it comes to planting bush beans in July, I like to plant 9 per square foot, and I make sure that I put a diced leaf mulch down over top of the soil. What this does is it helps keep the soil consistently moist to make sure that I get good germination when it comes to my beans. Also, beans are strong. The seedlings don't have a problem pushing right up through that diced leaf mulch. Unlike something like a lettuce, those seedlings are weak, they just can't push up through a mulch. Some of the pole bean varieties take longer to get a harvest from. For example, the yard long bean, that thing takes about 90 days to go from seed to harvest. So if you want to get some beans planted right now, just make sure you plant a variety that will give you a good harvest before the fall frost comes. There's one thing I want to show you that's kind of unrelated to this video right now, but while I was walking over here, I just noticed it, so I was like, I gotta show you guys. Look at the size of this celery. Tell me this thing isn't absolutely ridiculous. It's a behemoth. I mean, look how much celery stalks are there to harvest. Look at the size of the leaves up here. Absolutely insane. I'm gonna have to grab this today. Well, let me just grab at least one to taste it, because I've never grown a celery this big. I mean, it's in a perfect spot. It's got a lot of water here, and then it's in like a spot that gets a partial shade, so it's ideal for growing celery. This sucker looks good. The fourth crop we can still plant in July are carrots. You notice I have a bunch of carrots here. Let's actually grab a harvest of one. This one will probably be pretty good. Let's pop this right out. Oh, look at that perfect shaped carrot. That is what we like to see. But now is a great time to get another round of carrots planted. The thing about carrots is they don't like to be started in trays and then transplanted out. You need to direct sow these. The tricky thing about direct sowing carrots now is that they need like 2 weeks of consistent moisture in order to germinate well. And it's so dang hot right now, it's hard to keep the soil consistently moist. We also can't bury the carrots deep because they just don't like being buried deep. They like being planted very close to the surface. So what we do is what's known as the carrot board trick. We take this board and first we plant our carrots, then water them in. Next we come by with this board and we cover the carrots. After about 5 or 6 days, we want to make sure we're going out there every single day to lift the board up and see if any carrots have sprouted. Once you see the first carrots start to sprout, you take this board off. What this does is it keeps the soil consistently moist so we get good, even germination on our carrots. The thing is, we can't just plant the seeds of carrots and then put mulch over top of them instead of the board, because carrots don't like pushing up through mulch. Their seedlings are just not strong enough to push the mulch out of the way. So the carrot board trick is a great friend when you're starting seeds right now. That last carrot looked so good, I should grab another one. And look how dense we have them planted. I grow 16 carrots in 1 square foot. A really cool thing about carrots is if we start planting them now, then they will store in the ground far past a frost. So we got to kind of think of it like this. We get a round of carrots planted now, they start to grow, and once it gets a little cooler out and there's less sun, then these plants will start to grow a little bit slower. So that's why now is a good time to get them in the ground. We get them in the ground, they're growing, and then a frost comes, we keep them in the ground. They actually get sweeter as the ground gets colder. So we can kind of plant these carrots now. This way they're prepared to be stored in the ground in fall and even into winter. So we have some fresh snacks late in the year. One of the problems with starting seeds in July and even in August is that it's so dang hot out that the soil can dry out quickly, and then that can leave you with poor germination. Or what can happen is your seedlings pop out of the ground and then it's super hot out and the sun's beating down on them and it really stresses out those young plants. To help avoid that, what I like to do is I'll use this 40% shade cloth. I'll put it over top of this hinged hoop house that I have built, or you can just use any kind of cover and throw this 40% shade cloth on the plants when it's either a super hot day or on the hottest part of the day, just so your young plants can have a good young growing up where they're not just getting absolutely decimated by the sun, because you know what it's like in July and August. That sun, it's unbearable. Look at me. I've been out here for just a little bit and I'm sweating so much. One thing you might notice though is we've got the new merch on, the Let It Grow merch. I love how this one looks. We've got the tomato seedling starting, going through the stages of growth until we get to that fruit, that part that we all absolutely love. Another thing you'll notice is when I don't have the shade cloth on, I like to have an insect netting over top. This is super important because what this does is it protects our young plants from the cucumber beetles and also the squash bugs. This way our plants can grow up young, healthy, with no issues, and when we put them into the ground, they can just explode into growth. Another thing you could do is you could start seeds inside right now. Just make sure if you do that, that before you take those seedlings out and plant them into the garden, that you first harden them off. Those plants are going to be used to the inside conditions. Then when we take them and bring it outside, especially in July and August when it's so wicked hot, it's just too big of an adjustment. So slowly acclimate those plants to the outdoor conditions by just bringing them out a couple hours each day in the shade and then bringing them back in till the point where those plants could stay outside on their own for 24 hours without showing any signs of stress. At that point, take those things, transplant them in the garden and let them get growing. The fifth crop you can still get planted in July is lettuce. Similar to carrots, lettuce can be a little tricky to germinate at this time of the year with the weather being so dang hot. Also, lettuce seeds do not like to be buried deep. So what I like to do to get good germination at this time of the year is I'll start my lettuce seeds in cells underneath that shade cloth that I showed you. This way they could have a good start. If you don't have a shade cloth, you could also just start some of your lettuce seeds in a spot that gets like some filtered light, maybe through trees or something, just so they don't get scorched when they first get going. Another thing about lettuce is if you want, you could plant them in your beds. Just make sure when you plant them in your beds and transplant them into the garden, I suggest planting them in a spot that gets a little bit of filtered shade. Even if it's filtered shade from something like a squash plant, you kind of plant it next to that, just to make sure that the lettuce don't get cooked once you get them in the ground, because it's a hot time of year to be growing lettuce, but we want to get them started now so we can start bringing in the harvest as the weather starts to cool off. Another thing is you want to make sure that you're planting varieties at this time of the year that can deal with the heat well. A good variety is the slow bolt lettuce. That one has good resistance to bolting in the July heat, so it's definitely a good one I would get in the ground today. The sixth crop we can still get planted in July is Swiss chard. This nutrient-packed plant does an excellent job of withstanding both the heat and the cold. It'll kick out food for us for such a long period of time, and even outside of our own season. I love this one. Even if you have Swiss chard growing right now from the spring and it's still doing well, that thing will grow through the spring, in the summer, and then deep into the winter. So if you have it growing now, good on you. If you don't, then it's still a great time to get some Swiss chard planted, because you got to eat this one. This thing will grow really deep into the winter. Bill Mollison would say that Americans just don't grow enough Swiss chard, and I would tend to agree with him, because it's a great green, and when a lot of the other greens are starting to quit and bolt because of the heat, Swiss chard just keeps kicking out food. I find that to be incredibly valuable, and it has a nice flavor to it. Another great thing about planting Swiss chard right now is it can grow well in partial shade. So if it's super sunny out, super hot, you could start your Swiss chard seeds in the shade of another plant. It'll perform well, and this way you'll be happy with yourself knowing that basically in winter you can still be grabbing fresh greens. For the seventh crop we can still get planted in July, I'm going to encompass by saying all the brassicas, including kale, cabbage, cauliflower, and broccoli. Even though it's still early summer here, we still need to be thinking about the fall, especially when it comes to some varieties of brassicas that take like 100 days to reach maturity, or even more. You might be thinking, we only have 100 days till the first frost though, so do we still have time to get this stuff planted? Yes, because things like cabbage, cauliflower, all these brassicas are cold hardy, and they don't mind, withstanding something like a frost. Even though, if you come behind me, we already have some cabbages that are ready to harvest right here. We need to be thinking about the next round of cabbage. We can't be happy with just what we're getting today. So we'll grab this nice cabbage. You can see here, looking great, looking beautiful. And we also need to make sure we're getting some kale planted that will last so late into the season. Some varieties of kale, like the red Russian kale, this is the lacinato, by the way. The red Russian kale and also the white Russian kale will grow so deep into the season. I've even had varieties that have lasted all winter long and they were still alive in the spring. So they're great things to get planted now to set us up for that later harvest. When it comes to starting your brassica seeds at this time of the year though, it can be tricky with the heat. So what I like to do is I like to start my brassicas in cells underneath my shade cloth. This way I can monitor the temperature and the amount of light they're getting so they have a good, healthy start. Then when I transplant my brassicas into the garden, I make sure to do it on a cloudy day or a day where we're getting a little bit of rain. This way the brassicas have a little bit of time adjusting to their new home, because these are cold hardy veggies and they're going to have to be living in the heat of summer for a little while. We want to make that transition as good for them as possible. The next crop we can get planted in July are beets. Let's grab one right here. Look how big some of these suckers are. Woo, that's gotta be one of the biggest beets that I've ever grown. Oh yeah, look at that. That's one beet. That thing is massive. We're talking a lot of food, but that's what it's like when you have good soil with good soil structure and use a good organic fertilizer. You guys already know, I'm always using my own fertilizer, the JP's Secret Stuff. When it comes to beets though, they're one of my favorite overall dual purpose crops because we can eat it for the root and also we can eat the leaves, which is pretty dang good. They're great when you throw them into a salad. I wouldn't have a whole salad of just them, but they are good when you mix them in. Another cool thing about beets is that the typical varieties only take about 55 days to go from seed to harvest, which means we still have plenty of time to get some beets in the ground before the fall garden is in swing. Another cool thing about beets is that when it gets later in the season and the temperature starts to drop, the cooler weather actually makes both the leaves and the root of the beet taste better, making it one of the greatest crops to help us transition from that summer garden into the fall garden. Another crop we can still get planted in July is red Malabar spinach. This one takes about 75 days from seed to harvest. It's not a true spinach, but it's a heat-loving, vining green. And one of the great things about it is, unlike regular spinach, you know, regular spinach in the heat, the summer comes, the heat shows up, and then all of a sudden that thing bolts like almost immediately regular spinach. On the other hand, red Malabar spinach, it's not a true spinach, but has sort of a similar flavor and we could use it in similar ways, but that thing actually loves the heat. So when the heat comes, that thing thrives, which make them great things to plant opposite of one another. When your regular spinach gives up, the red Malabar spinach really starts to kick it into high gear, and this thing will pump out consistent leaves all through the heat of the summer. It actually loves the heat, which is a lot different from a regular spinach. When it comes to the Malabar spinach, you want to make sure you're growing that up a trellis because it's vining, and if you don't grow it up a trellis, it can kind of pull at some of your annuals that are close to it and kind of suffocate them a little bit. So make sure you get this one growing up a trellis. The plant overall looks incredibly beautiful with its nice purple stems, dark green, thick leaves. The leaves can be a little mucilaginous though if you eat them raw, so they're not great to make a whole salad from, but they're a great addition to a salad. They're packed with a high level of nutrition, and it's an incredible green to get into the garden right now. The next crop you can still get planted in July is basil. Basil is one of the easiest and most rewarding summer herbs to grow, and I think it also looks beautiful. To me, for some reason, it always reminds me of like a helmet or something. I don't know why, but regardless, it's an incredible herb to grow. And a cool thing about basil is it's a great companion for things like tomatoes and peppers. I like sticking basil right next to my tomatoes. Not only is it a good companion, but it's said to actually, the basil being next to the tomatoes is actually said to make the tomatoes taste like a little bit better. I don't know if it's true, but they're companions. They grow fantastic next to each other, which makes them space saving. Also, it's a great companion in the kitchen for tomatoes. So overall, basil is one of those greens and one of those herbs you have to have in the garden. If your basil is starting to flower, let me show you a trick. So once you see the basil starting to flower, like you'll see right here, what we want to do is go and pinch off the points where it's flowering. What that will do is it will cause the basil plant to go back to the vegetative state and produce more and more leaves. That's what we want. We're growing basil for the leaves, so we want to make sure we're going out there and removing the flowering points as they start to happen to keep that production coming. When it comes to starting basil at this time of year, I suggest starting those in trays and then planting them into the garden. Just make sure if you do start the plants inside that you give the plants time to harden off. Overall, no one should go a summer in their garden without growing some basil. It tastes delicious, it looks beautiful, and it's all around one of the greatest herbs. You'll notice right here we have some Tulsi basil, also known as holy basil. This one is really cool too. Just gotta make sure we pinch off those flowers at the top. It's an interesting basil. It's got a really strong smell to it, and it doesn't smell like the typical Genovese basil. Really nice. You'll notice down here though, I haven't got my mulch down just yet. So now that the hot weather is here, I'm gonna be coming by and putting a diced leaf mulch around all of my plants. I'm a little late on the mulch, but overall I think we're okay because I'm making sure I keep these beds nice and watered. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I truly hope that you get out there and get some of this stuff planted. Some people think July that the garden starts to slow down, but that's only if you don't keep planting things. If you're always sowing, then you always have things growing. That's kind of the whole idea with this kind of video. Every month, there's something to get planted into the garden. That's one of the most exciting things about gardeners, and that's one of the most a powerful and effective ways to garden with diversity. Like I've talked about in the past, diversity leads to stability in the garden. So when we plant a diverse number of crops, then that kind of makes it so we should have we've got like harvest insurance. Just say something like your cucumbers don't do that great, because this year, for whatever reason, it's been a tough year for cucumbers. It was kind of a cold, wet spring, and cucumbers don't like the cold. And also, if it's too wet when they're young, they can really start to get some disease issues and spread them. So it hasn't been the best year for cucumbers, but so far, it's been an incredible year for tomatoes. I can't even slow these things down. I mean, all my tomatoes and all my spots are absolutely crushing it. They're heading into production, which means I'm gonna have to go by and give them a top dressing. But that's just one of the cool things about growing so many different things. When one thing struggles, it's usually a bumper crop or a bumper year for something else. So I find that to be so fun when it comes to gardening. I want to send a thank you to one of our new channel members, Patricia A. O'Hearn. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. I mean, the garden is just so full of life and full of plants. It's truly a paradise out here, and there's nothing like being out in the garden, as I show you a little bit of a pan of the garden. That's why I'm always so encouraged to make these videos, where I want to encourage you to get out, to get your hands dirty, and to just be a part of what I call reality, of nature, of the real world. Get your hands in the soil, get some seeds planted, watch the plants grow, and then take a part in the whole cycle of life and living, and it'll just pay you back so much. You'll be absolutely amazed. I also want to mention to check out the merch over at teamgrow.us. We've got this new design and a few other designs that I'm incredibly proud of. I think they came out fantastic. I think they look great. And also, behind every design, there's a story. There's a meaning. We're not just sticking designs on shirts. Everything has a story behind it. I think that's important. I think that translates, and I think that, I think it's just nice when there's something deeper to what you're doing or what you're wearing. I also want to mention that you guys gotta go over to teamgrow.us to check out the community. We have well over 2,000 members now. We're all on there just sharing our resources, sharing our knowledge, so we can pool all of it together to get closer and closer to that whole entire mission, which is to grow a better future together. I had a blast out here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and get engaged down in the comments. That helps the channel an immense amount. Even if you just throw a thumbs up in the comments, that's helpful. It's been hot, it's been fun, but that's got to be the end of the video. I'll catch you guys in another one real soon. We out.